Welcome to NightLight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and, with a little luck, some wisdom. This is NightLight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome, everybody, to NightLight. It's actually during the day, so I guess welcome to NightLight in the daylight. So glad you could join me because I have with me one of my favorite authors. She's been on before, and her material is fascinating. Hold your breath because her last name is a tongue twister. I have Mary Rigoglioso, and I won't try that again. With us. She's written a wonderful book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, with Marguerite. And I have a cell phone that's going off, so we're just going to let it go, and we're going to keep going. Her book is an esoteric scholar, award-winning author, and global authority on virgin birth. She presents a bold new version of Mother Mary as a holy priestess and spiritual master. Many women have trouble with the image of the Virgin Mary, a young woman whose most esteemed quality has been celibacy. Yet, as Marguerite reveals in Inspiring Death, she was not just a docile maiden chosen by God to be the mother of Jesus. She was a great spiritual master in her own right, a sought-after healer and holy priestess who continued her public work long after Jesus' resurrection. Examining apocryphal texts as well as revelations from respected contemporary seers, she presents an extraordinary new understanding of Mother Mary and shows how her wisdom can help those on the spiritual pathway. She explores largely ignored periods of Mary's life, including her time as a leader of the early Christian community and the supreme teacher to other spiritual teachers, among them Jesus and his beloved companion, Mary Magdalene. She looks at Mother Mary's teachings of love, compassion, and inner power and reveals how it was her achievement of remarkable yogic powers and womb abilities that enabled her to conceive Jesus in a highly advanced way and resurrect his body. She also examines Mary's assumption into heaven and explains how her powers as a great spiritual master enabled her to transform into a goddess at the end of her time on earth. Revealing the secret life of Mother Mary as a deeply revered community leader, miracle worker, and advanced spiritual practitioner, she shows how nurturing a relationship with the world's most famous holy woman can provide healing, empowerment, and the development of your own womb powers. This is a profound book because often you wonder what happened to Mary and where did she come from, what her life was like. And in so many ways, although you know she was seen with Jesus, you don't really hear much about her. And this book fills in so much of that. And it changes your perception of the mother of Jesus greatly into a master teacher that taught Jesus as opposed to the other way. So welcome to the show. So glad you're with us again, Marguerite. And I can't wait to talk to you about this book.
Barbara, thank you so much for having me here again. It's lovely to be with you.
Well, your material is fabulous. I mean, you write great material, so why wouldn't somebody want to have you back?
Thank you.
I mean, your talent and your gifts precede you. So I know that your experience with Mother Mary was a very personal one. Yes. And you want to explain how you came into this search for who she was and what she was.
Yeah. Okay, I was brought up Catholic like many people, but she wasn't a very appealing role model for me as a young woman coming into her sexuality and so forth because of the way she's presented. So I held her at bay for a very long time, decades really. Mary Magdalene seemed much more interesting to me.
Oh, yeah.
When I was in my 20s and 30s. And then the whole Magdalene movement started where everyone started realizing, oh, my goodness, Mary Magdalene isn't what she seems. She's a profound sacred woman. She's not a prostitute. So all during that, I started teaching about Mary Magdalene, but I was really moving personally and spiritually into the awakening to the sacred feminine on a larger scale. So I was very interested in who these ancient goddesses were all over the world, in old Europe, everywhere, and prior to the Christian tradition. And so when I started studying this material and doing these programs about goddess veneration, and they were both learning programs and experiential programs. In one of the programs that I did in the Boston area, it was a women's spirituality program, and they started teaching about Mother Mary as basically the goddess of the West. And suddenly, all of my interest in the goddess made me realize, oh, she's been in my backyard all the time. This is how we know her in Christianity, as Mother Mary, even Mary Magdalene. So what is this all about? And it enabled me to just completely open the door to Mother Mary in the way that I was opening it to these other goddesses. And then as I started looking at her academically, and I wrote all of my material that we've spoken with previously and will again on miraculous conception as an actual practice of priestesses, I started getting more and more personal with Mother Mary because I was meeting other women. I mean, I was coming to it anyway, but I was meeting other women who had their own personal relationship with Mother Mary. And I thought, okay, this is not just a geeky a geeky foray on my part, really looking at Mother Mary as a master healer. And so those two roads started converging. And as they did, I began to have and invoke many more experiences with Mother Mary, which I talk about in this book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, that we're focusing on today. Some of the miracles that I had through her, intervention, if you will. And my personal relationship with her allowed me to deepen into the esoteric nature of who she really is, what her history is all about, and what her powers are all about. So that's kind of the short story there about how my intellectual and my personal really converged with her.
Well, yeah, I've done a little bit of reading in my life too, and I've always been fascinated because, the relationship between Mary and Joseph and the fact that she became the stepmother to his children, and that after Jesus was born, there was the possibility that she actually had a child with Joseph. I know early on the teaching that I received, and I'm 80, so the teaching was antiquated, but it was, after Jesus was born, Joseph was hit by lightning and never heard from again. That's not the truth.
No.
But it was a great way to tie that up in a nice little ribbon, so you just didn't ask, well, what happened to him and the children, and what was Jesus like as a child, and what was Mary like as a child? I mean, we get the very dry story biblically, and you have to really dig to find out the other information about the lives of these people that make them so real that you can accept them as real people instead of just
real
a name.
People. Real, exactly. I mean, Mother Mary has basically disappeared in the New Testament. She makes a brief appearance as having divinely conceived Jesus, and that's kind of it. You rarely hear about her again, except maybe when she asks Jesus to convert the water to wine at the wedding in Cana. And that is it in the canonical Gospels. As you're saying, you have to poke around these that were rejected by the official Catholic Church, but were considered gospel by the living people of, medieval and earlier Europe. And there were biographies written about Mother Mary based on some of these texts, a number of which, if not many of which, were probably destroyed.
Well,
so that's the other thing, okay?
I think what gets me is that, they start with her instead of, Sarah and Anne, and the fact that she was conceived spiritually immaculately, as well was her mother. Was her mother? Yeah, I think so.
And we don't have a record of that. She could have been. She was probably in a lineage of these women, but certainly she conceived Mary in what we would call miraculous fashion. She did not engage in regular intimate relations the way people do. She was a high holy adept of divine conception. And this was a whole plan that these families were involved in, probably over hundreds of years, in order to incarnate at just the right time for this to be made possible. So,
one of the great facts that I loved was that up until, I don't know what age it was, but it was several years old, her feet were never allowed to touch the ground.
That's right. I talk about that in the previous book, The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, and that's a common thing. You see it, for example, with the Kumari in Nepal, the young girl who is selected as the incarnation of the goddess, and at that point she's only a few years old. Her feet never touch the ground again while she is in service of that office until, I believe, she hits menarche. So, yes, talk about being elevated. Mother Mary was definitely in that tradition from before her conception and all the way through. And what I talk about, Barbara, in this new book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, is going beyond even Mary's conception and her childhood, which you can find in that apocryphal gospel known as the Infancy Gospel of James, which was originally called Birth of Mary. But I go all the way through to what she was doing when she was gestating Jesus, what she was doing giving birth to Jesus, what she was doing after Jesus was born, and what she was doing after the events, before the events of the crucifixion and afterward, all the way on into her presumably ripe old age. And what we learn is that she was the first leader of what we would call, the church. But at that point, it wasn't the church. It was just this movement around the teachings of not only Jesus, but of her and, of Magdalene and so forth. So there's a whole life of this woman that unfolds through this new book that I've discerned through her suppressed biographies, as well as as you saw, I have an entire chapter dedicated to what the late Hindu saint Sri Kaleshwar retrieved about her life, what he said about her life, and the kinds of yogic and mantric practices that she was using in all of her womb magic, right? So this is what I go into.
Where did she get that training? It wasn't. Did she go to Egypt for this training?
She may have gone to Egypt. She herself, I mean, he never says this, but he does say that Jesus goes to India before and after the crucifixion. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we don't know if Mother Mary went to places, but somehow, even if she was, in situ in the Middle East, she was working with these same mantras and these sacred drawings that are found in the ancient palm leaf manuscripts made out of palm leaves that were written down by ancient sages going back thousands of years, with many schools of teachings, but one major one was about the holy womb chakra, what they call the holy womb chakra. She was working with these materials according to Sri Kaleshwar. She was doing these mantra practices as part of her daily prayer and meditation practice and so forth to gain these powers in her last lifetime as a human woman.
I find it so strange that she taught Jesus. It was not the other way around.
That's right.
And to take away, Jesus often talks of his father, but doesn't talk of his mother, who was his teacher. I find that hard to believe. Is it because they wanted to downplay women? Is that it? I mean, what was the point?
Yes.
I mean, she was the one that had all the good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think, over the centuries and now millennia, it already was a patriarchal situation that Mary incarnated into and that Jesus incarnated into. It was a very intense time of patriarchy. It was the Roman Empire in that part of the world. And so already things were being twisted from what they had been thousands of years prior to that, where the goddess reigned supreme, priestesses were very, very empowered, and so forth. But over these millennia and centuries, as this, incursion of patriarchy came in, the texts were either distorted, rewritten, disappeared, or whatever, along with all of the information or much of the information about the goddesses and the sacred women. So it's all part of this patriarchal wave of what was happening. And so how Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene were treated traditionally is all part of that patriarchal wave. And so you have to be very astute academically as well as open intuitively to discern the deeper layers of who they were, the stream of their reality as masters on the planet. And that's what this book is all about. I'm not the first one to have, seen Mother Mary in a different way, but I think this is a very significant book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, in that it brings together so many pieces about who she really was that have not quite been described in this way before. And this also includes, as I said, the material that Sri Kaleshwar has discerned from the ancient palm leaf manuscripts, who she was, and he claimed to have past life memory of walking with this sacred family.
I find it interesting also that there was a trinity of the Marys, and
yes.
what I thought was interesting was that you have Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and then you have a feminine trinity as well.
Yes, absolutely. And so, in this case, it It would be Mother Divine, Grandmother Anne, Mother Mary, right? Or it could be Grandmother Anne, Mother Mary, Jesus, or it could be Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, and Mary's sister, as you were saying, they walked as a trinity, Mother Mary's sister, who also came to be named Mary, and other trinities of this nature, you know. So what I talk about in the book is that Mary was a priestess title. It originally came from the term Mary in the ancient Egyptian, which meant divine love, essentially. So these were priestesses of divine love and sacred holy womb wisdom. And that's why they are all named Mary. That's why two daughters in one family would have that name. It came down, you know, originally it would have been Miriam or Mariam in the Hebrew or the Aramaic, and then it comes down to us in the anglicized version as Mary, but which is very interesting because the Mary is so similar to Mary, how it's transliterated from the Egyptian, that it really very strongly carries that resonance. And this term Mary, divine love, was always associated with Isis. And I talk in the book about the relationship of Mother Mary to Isis and that whole trajectory and how they, you know, so there is so much in this book that people who are interested in an illuminated and empowering new understanding of Mother Mary that gets beyond her dogma and that uncloaks her from that horrible heavy veil or coat that she's always wearing. This is for those people who really want to understand Mother Mary as a role model. That's the thing. It's not just about looking at her as a historical artifact and, oh, isn't that interesting that women were empowered back then? But what does she represent to us, and what does she model for us, and what is she still teaching us? That's where I'm also going in this book.
Well, I think also it was fascinating that she was the head of what became the church before Thomas was, and then Peter. So, you know, everybody's saying, oh, Jesus was the, you know, my rock upon which I'll build my church. Not really. I mean, without her, it would have fallen apart because his disciples deferred to her. They didn't like it, but they did defer to her in many places in the Bible that can be, you know, handpicked out and pointed to, that, you know, they deferred to her.
Yeah.
And
right. Well, that's where, exactly. And that's where these apocryphal gospels, like the Gospel of Philip, come in, where you do get this information that they actually revered her, as well as in the manuscripts about her crossing out of her body at the end of her life and her ascension, essentially. The men were very, very respectful of her. They always wanted her to speak first. They went to her for information about the mysteries, about Jesus. And so there was really no problem there, the way there was a problem for Mary Magdalene. Peter bowed to Mother Mary. He was in competition with Mary Magdalene. And that's what I bring out in this book through these ancient documents, showing where is this written? What did the Catholic Church choose to ignore or declare non-valid? And that's, in those places are where you find the real information. And that's what I've done in the mystery in the Secret Life of Mother Mary.
Well, and in her ascension, I have never heard the ascension described the way you've described it. The only way, you know, I've heard it described is, well, they came down and got her. And
that's right.
You know, that just is not true. There were processes and ceremonies, and while she was passing, she was working miracles all over the place. She was transmigration. She was teleported herself to other places where she did healings.
That's right.
She
That's
was
right.
just and at the same time, they saw around her a lot of the Jesus was around her.
The
other
ancestors, those who had crossed over before her.
So,
I mean, those texts are called the 6 books narratives about her, what the Catholic Church calls Assumption, or her dormition, meaning, like you're saying, it just was like this quick process, and she's gone. She didn't really die, but she kind of went to sleep. She kind of was assumed into heaven. Well, these other narratives, these 6 books, because it was said that 6 full books were written about the process of her passing out of her body, they tell, like you're saying, this remarkable story, and I go into detail. And while this, when you give a first read of it, you can say, oh gosh, this is just Catholic dogma, people making up stuff. But when you really look at it from the perspective of what they say about these traditional Buddhist monks and, these Hindu sadhus and how they cross out of their bodies, it's the same thing. It's the rainbow body process where they are very high adepts. They know how to extract the life force from their bodies, and they know how to actually disappear their bodies. Like they take all of their light with them so that only the fingernails and the hair remain. And that's what happened with Mother Mary, because one of her Gospels says that in the tomb, all they found were her linens. They did not find her body either. So, these are things that we need to know about for our empowerment as a planet, and especially that women need to know about for their empowerment as spiritual beings who have powers that have been denied us and stripped from us. We really want to practice ourselves in these powers again, reclaim them for our healing and for the advancement of our world once again.
Well, I think also when when Mary got pregnant, it was, through ritual, and then there was a flash of light.
Yes.
And she was pregnant, and she was 12.
She could have been anywhere between 12 and 16. Yes, indeed.
That is
yes,
heavy
because
burden.
she was. What's that?
It's a heavy burden to carry.
Well, she came in as a high holy adept because she was divinely born. That means she was already a higher vibration than most human beings. That's the purpose of divine birth, is to bring forth a really high holy avatar. So she already was one. And then she had this continual training from the time she was born through the time she conceived Jesus of how to work with the matter and light interface, how to work with the other dimensional intelligences to bring this being that came to be known as Jesus into her literal physical body so that he could walk the planet and help people through teachings, through the demonstration of miracle capacities that he would say are open to all people. So there was a big program going on here. There was a lot.
But there were a lot of divine presences conceived and born during that time frame.
Yes.
And
yes,
you John the Baptist as well, was he divinely conceived?
That's right. Yes, by Mother Mary's, they say cousin, but it could have been her aunt, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, the mother of John the Baptist, could have been Anne's sister. That is what the Islamic teachings suggest. So this was a whole family of people who were involved in bringing these high. So yes, John the Baptist would have been an avatar himself.
So in times like this, like we're going through now, it would be a good time for some divine people to be born into this situation that we're going through these days.
That's right.
Is the woo magic practice still? Are there? I mean,
yes.
But
Yes,
are we? Is the training enough so that a divine person could be conceived?
Well, here's the thing. What the late Hindu saint Sri Kaleshwar, who brought forth this holy womb chakra material from the ancient palm leaf manuscripts, says is he acknowledges that a divine conception of the nature that Mother Mary could have accomplished possible. And he says that it's possible for a regular couple to conceive what he calls a divine child by using some of these same mantric practices. And there's a 2-sequence mantra series that I teach through the Holy Womb Chakra teachings that I have available through Seven Sisters Mystery School. And it has to do with the couple chanting one of them during sexual union. And after the pregnancy, the woman chanting the other one as much as possible. And that the powers of these angelic syllables, which is what mantras are, they're a string of angelic syllables, confer upon this child is to clear them of any karma and bring in the blessings of Mother Divine, the Shakti blessings, to help this child be an elevated being. Whether it's on the level of a Jesus or a Mother Mary, well, maybe not, but at least there's a program that's available to people of elevating the types of children that they're bringing to the planet now, even without having to train to become a divine birth priestess, which no one even really knows whether all of those codes are fully available for people to do at this stage. I think they could be reconstructed. There may be an unbroken lineage, but I'm not sure.
Well, during that time frame, the Jewish religion was so all male, and it was a closed club. Women didn't come near it. How did this kind of a practice survive with the temple being as strict and as nasty as it was towards women?
Yeah, well, a few things. I think, Barbara, that the grouping that Jesus and the Holy Family were a part of were perhaps one of the more esoteric sects of Judaism, known as either the Essenes or a branch of the Essenes known as the Serapeutae. So this wouldn't have been, there was no real one monolithic Judaism, just like there's no one monolithic Catholicism or Christianity. There were all sorts of, or even Gnosticism. There were all sorts of things that were going on at the time. And even what goes on, or what went on in the Hebrew temples is a bit ambiguous because it does talk about goddess veneration. It talks about these sacred virgins of the temple. It talks about other divine births through, Zipporah and Rachel and Leah. I mean, if you know how to discern through the Bible, and there are numerous writers and scholars who have done so over the last few decades, you see that the Hebrew temple was not just a patriarchal fortress. It was increasingly trying to become that and clamp it down, but there was a process, and there is indication that there were females who were in priestess, levels in these temples as well. And so whether the temple that Mother Mary participated in was fully Essene, or whether it was kind of a type of Hebrew temple that has been, the information of which has been increasingly suppressed, it's not entirely clear. But again, these ancient documents show us that a lot more was going on than we've been led to believe through the modern religious dogma that we've been fed.
Yeah, it just, but her training, I mean, when she was at three, she was given over to, I think,
the temple.
So the men had to be aware of
That's
what
right.
they had did.
Yes, yes. So you see, it's quite ambiguous because it does seem she was being given over to a temple in which, guess who was the main priest? At the time, it was Zechariah, the partner of none other than Elizabeth, the mother of John the Baptist. So you see, we don't know which temple Zechariah was the head of, right? Mm-hmm. What Judaism really looked like at that time. But according to these texts, and I have no reason to deny them, and there's so much cross-verification even in the Hebrew Bible about this, these women and these men were involved in very esoteric projects. And this was one of them, to bring in these high holy avatars to really help humanity. And you know, Barbara, it's not just to help humanity with a spiritual ascension, but it's to help humanity with the foundation for spiritual ascension, which is personal healing. And that's why the subtitle of my book is Divine Feminine Power for Personal Healing and Planetary Awakening. And I talk about how I have had these experiences with Mother Mary as a healing mentor for me, as well as a spiritual mentor, because they knew they were coming in at a time where the human race was deeply fractured and traumatized. So they knew and they know that a major part of their work is to help us heal this trauma so that we can restore our own angelic abilities and template.
Now, she, during her lifetime, did healings. She healed the dead. She raised the dead. She did all sorts of healings. And yet, during Jesus' time frame, you hear her doing none of that.
Right.
And it wasn't until after he died that she went public, so to speak. So,
well, let's put it this way. The Gnostic Gospel of Philip says that she always walked with Jesus. Mm-hmm. The canonical Gospels tell us that she interacted with Jesus asking him to perform a miracle. But again, it's not until after the resurrection that the Gospels, the hidden Gospels, reveal her capacities to do healings, miracle work, resurrections, and so forth. Okay, and this is where the Sri Kaleshwar material is like the missing link, because he, as I describe in The Secret Life of Mother Mary, he says that because of her womb practices, Mother Mary was the one who resurrected Jesus.
Yeah.
Body and soul. Now, his story is that Jesus resurrected his body, that they all knew these yogic mantric practices and processes, that he resurrected his body, and Kaleshwar says he went to India. And there is evidence in India of Jesus' presence. I haven't dug deeply into that. Many people say that it was before his crucifixion, but Kaleshwar says it's after, you know.
Yeah, and they called him Isa.
Yes, Isa.
Actually, there's also,
you know,
there's also a grave where they say he's buried.
You know, so the mystery continues here. And the fact is that what this is telling us is that Mother Mary not only gave him divine birth, but she gave him divine rebirth. She resurrected him just the way Jesus resurrected Lazarus. Mm-hmm. Okay? Stories we do not hear, but that require the weaving together of information from numbers of traditions and holy people in this reconstruction of the tapestry of Mother Mary.
Well, you know, when they talk about the oils and the herbs that they took into the grave to wash him with, aloe was one of them, and that's healing. Yes. So it's kind of like right away you're thinking, they're not using this to just wash him. They're using this to heal him, to, you know, enable him to come back and go forth and continue his ministry, though not in that particular area.
Well, see, really good point. A really good point. I mean, you're using your intuition, aloe, you know, right? So this is what we have to do. We have to see these little seeds, these little threads, these shards, and realize that there's a whole world under that term, or and that's what I do in my books about Mother Mary.
The other place where I saw a symbol that you didn't talk about, I'm sure it was there, but you didn't mention it, was that she was weaving part of a tapestry that would hang in front of the Holy of Holies. And at the same time, she was probably weaving the life of the infant within her as well.
That's right. That's right. Yes, and I talk about that quite a bit in the previous book, The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception. Yes, she was considered a temple weaver. Okay, what temple and weaving what? Clearly, this is talking about not just, you know, three-dimensional tapestries. This is talking about an interdimensional kind of weaving into the womb, using light, using sound, using mantra. This is the level of mastery of these divine birth priestesses that, of course, are at the same level that's been attributed to the holy men, the Padmasambhava of Buddhism, and, you know, others, right? Once you start seeing her in that light, you realize, oh, this isn't just some made-up Catholic story about her, or even, you know, apocryphal story. This is describing the life and the characteristics and capabilities of these high-level sacred holy women adepts at the time, abilities of which are resurrectable today.
Well, yeah, and when you stop and think about the adoration that is poured upon her, it isn't just because she gave birth to a baby. It's because there was so much more of teaching him and making him wise in spiritual ways. And, you know, and so, you know, frankly, if I gave birth to somebody that was supposed to be, you know, a spiritual teacher and stuff like that, it would have intimidated the hell out of me. And at 16 or 12 or 14 or however old she was, it didn't faze her one bit. And so that it seems to me that there is greater respect for her unseen practices than there is for the fact that she just happened to have Jesus.
That's right. I mean, again, this is all a part of the unveiling of Mother Mary now, timed for this moment in the history on the planet, I believe, you know, in the history of our world. And it's something that, it's material that anybody could have cobbled together for decades now. And in fact, many scholars have. They've written various things. There's a very fine scholar, Ali Katuz, who has written Mary Ann Beavis, I believe. These women have definitely gone through the textual and visual evidence around Mother Mary and these early women of the early church. What I've done is I've taken some of that research, added my own, made it all very readable, and I've incorporated also what Sri Kaleshwar says about Mother Mary. And when you put that whole package together, along with my personal story, then Mary starts popping up not only into 3 dimensions, but 5 dimensions and 7 dimensions and 9 dimensions, and the wonder and mystery of who this woman was and is and who we are capable of becoming really starts opening up for us. That's my intention with this book.
What gets me is that she must have known from the very beginning that she had a special mission in life, that that she actually, on top of having this the thing that she had to do, she also had to be a stepmother, keep a house, raise children, and I believe have another baby or two, so that she I guess once she had birthed Jesus, that her celibacy was no longer needed, so therefore she could be a wife to Joseph. But at some time, it was fascinating because at the crucifixion, Jesus basically gave her to somebody else rather than.
Yeah.
Why was that?
Oh, I think he just left her in the care of someone who would serve as her son. And this was the beloved disciple, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, he just wanted to know that she was going to be taken care of to the end of her days, because what I discern from her story is that she never had children other than Jesus. All of those other children were Joseph's by a previous woman. They were all her stepchildren. Now, Mother Mary's mother, Anne, did go on to have another child, another Mary, the regular way, not through a miraculous conception. So yes, It does seem that these divine priestesses could relinquish their celibacy vow. Personally, my intuition is that Mother Mary did not do so, but that she was the stepmother to Joseph's children. And again, these ancient biographies talk about this and how she managed the whole thing. She was very revered by these people who were older than her. Some of them went into the holy orders as a result of her influence and Jesus' influence, and so forth. So it's very interesting when you start looking into this biographical material and start putting one piece together with another, and then the tapestry or the puzzle comes into view, and you realize, oh my goodness, there's just so much more to this story.
Oh my gosh, I loved her closeness with Magdalene too.
Yeah,
I thought that was magnificent.
Yeah, so I really had to discern. I really had to dig in and look with special vision at, well, if Mother Mary was Jesus' mother, and if Magdalene did partner with Jesus, even in a marriage, then Mother Mary was Mary Magdalene's what? Mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And what was that all about? So I really discussed that in the book, and I discussed what you were alluding to a little bit earlier, what Sri Kaleshwar says was nothing less than the soul-mated relationship between Mother Mary and Jesus, that they were soul mates, not in the sexual sense, but they were in the, karmic sense. Jesus, his best friend, was his mother. And this is not just, as I show in the book, this is not just something that Sri Kaleshwar says. There are parallels in, like, the life of the Virgin. One of the biographies about her attributed to Maximus, one of the clergy, or an early clergyman, and that they kind of were really bonded. And she would experience everything that Jesus would experience. And Kaleshwar, just says that whenever Jesus was doing healings, he would always pray first to Mother Mary to kind of get his powers in order. Again, as you're saying, things that we don't really see, certainly in the canonical Gospels, and that you have to dig fairly deeply into some of the other suppressed material to discern.
What a disservice to women as a whole, and to her in specific, to take away the story, to take away her credit for what she taught Jesus, and then he turned around and taught it to the masses and is given credit for it. I mean, it doesn't matter. Yeah. It's universal truths that he was giving out and she shared with him, and they've been around for a very long time. But the fact that no acknowledgement is, and of course because there was no attention to her, her life was probably saved, because had she been as powerful a teacher as her son, she would have been killed as well.
Yeah.
And it would have been easier to get away with that, too.
Yeah, I mean, in the 6 books about her ascension, and in especially that one, she did come against the authorities, the Hebrew authorities. They did not like how she was behaving at Jesus' so-called grave. They did not like what was happening toward the end of her life. A mob was set upon her to try to kill her, but she was saved through miraculous sounding means in this process. So she definitely came under some danger, for sure.
Well, and the one part that I thought was so cool is that at one point there was the order to go to the house and take her. She didn't want her body destroyed. And when the soldiers got there, not only her, but everybody else had been transported to another place.
Yes, yes. You see, these are the kinds of abilities that these people had, the kinds of forces that they were working with. And I talk about parallel stories that you read about among Native Americans and things like that. So it's not all just cockamamie sounding, Christian tripe or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really got correspondence with these traditions of holy adepts working at miracle levels and so forth. And that's when we start looking at Mother Mary, it really exonerates her. It's like she was like the Dalai Lama times 10, right? When the Dalai Lama is identified as a child and he has past life memory and all this and that. But we're talking about an even more intensified version of this kind of thing in the form of a woman.
Well, and what I was so impressed with is that her healings and her teachings and her everything were done to teach people something. It wasn't just, let me heal this and then move on. The healing became a teaching for people to understand more greatly how to behave towards each other and or themselves, so that her ministry was a very soft, gentle one, while Jesus's became almost a political movement.
Yeah, well, he was really carrying the warrior Shiva energy, and the role of, he was handling the role of the masculine, especially at the time, so that the women could be more in alignment with the nature realm, with the feminine.
What a shame that the early whoever's didn't include her messages along with his. It would have made the Bible so much better.
Well, Barbara, I mean, this is all part of the negative agenda that's been upon humanity for quite some time, and is the very reason why this Holy Family injected themselves in this form at that time, 2,000 plus years ago, because they knew that humanity was being besieged by a great deal of negativity from interdimensional forces, as I see it. And they were here to turn the ship around and say, well, you have interdimensional power as well, people. We want to help you remember this.
Well, I think the same thing is in play today.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why these things are now like termas. You know, in the Buddhist tradition, it's something that is hidden for a while, and then all of a sudden people find it buried in soil or whatever, and it is filled with teachings that are calibrated or timed for specific periods when people need the information. And I think that this emerging material about Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary is a terma that's being timed for the now.
Absolutely.
We're in a place where we're ready to hear this information, because so many people have done so many other kinds of spiritual preparation. They're open to the esoteric nature of reality. They're open to going beyond three-dimensionality into higher dimensions. They're open to extraterrestrials even. They're open to unicorns and dragons. And I talk about the unicorn in The Secret Life of Mother Mary as well. Okay?
That was one thing when you talk about the cloisters in New York and the tapestries there. I've been there, and I got thrown out because I had to touch it. It's the cloisters is a magnificent place for all sorts of phenomenal stuff. But I just noticed our time is up, so we will continue this in December, because we're going to go into your other book and stretch this material even further.
That's right. I'm so glad. Thank you so much.
So do you want to give people your email and your website and stuff like that so they know where to find you? Yes.
So people can find out about me at my school, sevensistersmysteryschool.com. The 7 is written out, SEVEN. And there you will find a lot of information. As of the recording of this show, we have my book birthing party on July 16th, 2024. You can come to that live, and we have a variety of free gifts that we're giving in association with my book coming out. And I also have the Mary and Magdalene priestess training coming up that's starting September 10th, 2024, and will run through February. So for people who really want to step up as the Mary, step up as the Magdalene, these are both titles, and finding out what this means for you and how you can help restore your own healing capacities and your own sacred capacities, definitely go to sevensistersmysteryschool.com. And, of course, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, the book, can be found wherever books are sold. There will be an audio version coming out soon. The Kindle and the print are in pre-order right now on Amazon and other places. And so come join the party.
Fantastic. Well, where are you located again?
I physically am located in the Northeast of the United States in Massachusetts, but my school is international. So we work with and serve people all over the world.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure, and I look forward to the next show.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much, Barbara, again for having me, and many blessings to everybody who's been listening, and I hope that this material helps you with your personal healing and awakening.
Absolutely. And good night, everybody. Thanks for being here. Might check back with me on Wednesday. I think I have Damagia, who's going to be on, and we're going to do work on her dream interpretations. So check back and check the calendar on the website. That'll give you the right time and the place. Looking forward to seeing you there, and later on next week, take a good, cool evening and relax and find something to meditate on and clear your mind and center yourself and get back into the flow. Good night now.